Today we're going to talk about the vaccines.
I would say to uncover one of the biggest, if not the biggest, corruption scandal in the history of the European Union. This is the contract with Moderna. With the Pfizer is the same. We don't even know the title of this chapter. And here are just some of the pages.
So they publish it with black stuff. Are they stupid?
They do not want people to know what's exactly in these contracts. Why? When the COVID-19 erupted, the European Commission came out and said, we need a vaccine. A political body dictated what is the solution to a medical problem, a vaccine. Well, who are you to say that? They agreed to purchase 10 doses of vaccines per every human living in the European Union. It's important for people to understand all these billions of doses of vaccines that were purchased. They were purchased based on certain contracts that were signed by Ursula von der Leyen. Ursula von der Leyen exchanged text messages with Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer. When a journalist from New York Times found out about it and requested the messages, she deleted the messages. Every time when I had to enter the parliament, I had to fight with the security guys. They said we have to write a report and then you will be fined. And I was fined. I received the highest fine.
How much?
I think 8,000 or 9,000 euros.
Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that millions of posts online that were saying that the vaccines have side effects, they were censored. But that's true. The vaccines have side effects.
My official speeches were censored online. So you go in the plenary and you exercise your mandate as a member of the European Parliament, and among many things that you can do is to speak, right? You post the speech online and in a matter of minutes it's deleted. And then
So
you get...
they deleted your speech?
Yes.
In the European
Not one,
Parliament?
many.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
It gets me upset actually.
You know what? It's interesting. Moderna submitted tests done prior to December 2019. The CEO of Moderna came and I asked him, how is it possible? And he could not provide a straight answer.
So you are saying that this is coordinated? Let's go with this conspiracy or truth, whatever.
Look, this is something that has to be investigated. And they said, yeah, but look how many people we saved. Well,
How many people you killed?
too much money involved and too much darkness, I would say.
Who are you?
I'm Cristian Terheș, second term. In the European Parliament, I'm from Romania and president of the Romanian National Conservative Party and member of the ECR group, the European Conservative and Reformist group.
And today we're going to talk about the vaccines. And the last 5 years, you were, I think, one of the most advocate of the members of the European Parliament about the scandals of the vaccines and all this stuff. Pfizer, Ursula von der Leyen getting some problems and all. You're going to explain us all this stuff. So that's why we're here today, to uncover what you've been fighting for 5 years.
I would say to uncover one of the biggest, if not the biggest, corruption scandal in the history of the European Union.
Wow.
Because we are talking about billions, not millions, not hundreds of millions, but billions of doses of vaccines. Let me rephrase that. Billions of allegedly vaccines that combat COVID-19 virus. But the time showed that they changed the definition of a vaccine. At the beginning of the pandemic, the definition of a vaccine was obviously a medical product that concurrently, so at the same time, it's fulfilling two objectives. First is generating a natural immunity against that.
First of all, you need to remember that I'm a kid, stupid kid. So you need to speak to me simple for me to understand everything.
If you have any questions, follow-up questions,
Yes.
feel free to, address them, because it's very important for people to understand what actually happened and why the fight that we fought here in the European Parliament since 2020 was so important, to uncover what was actually going on across the globe. So usually the definition of a vaccine, it's a medical product that, you can take through an injection or you swallow it. You swallow a pill. But that medical product achieves two objectives at the same time. First, it's producing immunity. So it generates an immune reaction, by your immune system to whatever virus you get through that vaccine. That's the first condition. And the second condition, it's stopping the transmission of the virus. That is the whole idea of a vaccine, right? So it will it will make you immune to the virus first. And second, you're not spreading the virus anymore. Well, when the COVID-19 erupted, initially, if you remember, the World Health Organization, WHO, said initially for 3 months in 2020, at the beginning of 2020, that this virus is not dangerous for people. Obviously, the states had the chance to react in the early stage because the virus exists. I mean, there's a whole debate if the virus was created in a lab or not. Based on the information that I have, it was maybe not necessarily created, but enhanced in a lab in Wuhan. It spread across the globe. It was the New Year Eve in the Chinese calendar. Thousands of Chinese people especially from northern part of Italy, they went to China to celebrate their New Year Eve. When they came back, they spread the virus all over the place. Now, the WHO knew about the virus. They knew it since the month of November 2019 because the Taiwanese authorities notified WHO that there's a virus in China, in the Wuhan region, that it's creating, the kind of madness that we saw that this virus created. The problem is that WHO, which is led by a Marxist, by a communist from Ethiopia, because he's in bed with the Chinese Communist Party, and China doesn't acknowledge Taiwan as a legit entity, they dismiss the notification. So this is very important to understand, especially now, since President Trump, for example, in the US, withdraw the United States from WHO, from the World Health Organization. So you had a global entity like WHO who received notification in November of 2019 that there's a virus that is killing people, that it's creating that kind of pneumonia in Wuhan, and they dismissed the information. In December of 2019, the world found out about it because there was a doctor from China who went public and said that they have this virus that it's, in many instances, killing people. Okay. The head of WHO in the month of January, February, March, and early April of 2020 went publicly and said, well, this virus is not dangerous for humans. And it was. So when the whole world was infected with this virus, then they said, well, they moved from one extreme to another.
How many days after they came out with this?
That the virus was dangerous?
Yes.
I think it was like 3-4 months.
3-4 months after. That is not dangerous, that they said.
Initially, yes. But imagine that in the first instance, if WHO would have acknowledged or admitted that this virus is dangerous, they could easily, lock everything down in China. I mean, it's communism there. They can easily lock everything up and, kind of contain the virus, which they did not do. So the world found out about.
And why you think they didn't do? Just to clarify, because?
Well, they did not do it because, based on what I know, they did not want to have China look bad because
they are spreading this,
that they are spreading the virus that
started from there.
Exactly, So they said, well, initially they even said that the virus initiated from a bat somewhere that's 600 miles away, in China from Wuhan region. So the virus was spreading. People got concerned. Now WHO said, well, this is a dangerous virus that is killing people. We got to lock everybody, in their houses. In the same time, institutions like the European Commission said the following. Well, we need a vaccine.
You were a member of the European Parliament.
I was, yes, because I was elected in 2019, in May. So this is like almost a year after I was elected here. So the European Commission came out and said, we need a vaccine. So a political body, this was the first problem. A political body kind of dictated what is the solution to a medical problem, a vaccine. Well, who are you to say that? I'm not saying that the vaccine is not the solution, but let the experts say that. Let the scientists,
So the commission came and they said that we need a vaccine.
Not only that, but we need to give money to these pharmaceutical companies to develop mRNA vaccines against COVID-19. mRNA vaccines are a different kind of vaccines than the regular one.
So we fund these companies.
Exactly. Now, the regular vaccine...
money?
Well, they had the money, but they got more money from the government or from the European Commission. Now, for people who are watching us, it's very important to understand that when we talk about vaccines, in the common term, I mean, even when we were kids, we were vaccinated, against many kind of illnesses. Now, those medical products, they have inside of them the kind of viruses, either dead viruses or atrophied viruses, as they are called. They are barely alive. That their main role is to stimulate an immune reaction to the virus. But it takes years to develop, and especially to check, to verify if that virus is healthy for the general public. In the case of mRNA, you're not injected with the virus. That's the problem. You are injected with the mRNA with a message that it's kind of stimulating your body to create, in this case, not the virus, but the shell of the virus. COVID-19, if you remember the images, it was like a sphere with those spikes, Now, those spikes were the shell, were part of the shell of the virus. So you have the virus here, and then you have a shell that is covering the virus. So what the mRNA medical products, let's say, did, once you were injected with them, stimulated your body to create the spike proteins that are covering the COVID-19 virus. Obviously, your immune system, it's reacting to this intruder because spike protein is not a natural protein. It's not something that's usually generated by your body. So certain cells of your body are creating these spike proteins. On the other side, the immune system is kicking in order to kill, the intruder. Now, the problem is that the immune system, it's exactly like the antivirus that you have on your computer, right? So if your antivirus, for example, detects a virus, it kills the virus on your computer, a document. But let's say if you have a virus inside of your PDF file, it's going to delete all the PDF files because the virus might think that the antivirus might think that all the PDF files are corrupted, right? Well, the same thing happens with these medical products. Because they were not properly tested, it did not take years or decades to test them. Everything was done in a matter of days, weeks. These medical products were imposed on people. Now you have a lot of side effects, adverse reactions. Now, we go back to 2020. At the beginning of the pandemic, the European Commission said, well, we need vaccines to fight this virus, but not any kind of vaccines, mRNA vaccines. Now, at that time, there was one company that was manufacturing this mRNA vaccines. That was Moderna. And then later on, Pfizer came on board. Now, they said, well, we need money from the government, in this case, from the European Commission, to do all this research and development and help you achieve your objective, because you, Ursula von der Leyen, said that in a matter of months, we need a new vaccine to fight this virus, right? So you had a company that received money from the European Commission and developed these so-called vaccines in a matter of months. But at the same time, you had the European Commission imposing on the European Parliament and on the Council to adopt the digital COVID-19 certificate, or the so-called green certificate. What was the role of that? You had a QR code. I don't know if you had it in Cyprus back in 2021 or so. So you got a QR code on your phone, and you were not allowed to enter certain premises, certain buildings. You're not allowed to move from left
to the
to right.
supermarket.
Exactly.
If you didn't have this certification.
Yeah, exactly. So the certificate proved that you either got vaccinated, tested, or you had the illness in the past 6 months. Now, to understand the abuse that the Europeans were faced with, I was a member of the European Parliament, right? We have certain immunities. You are the same, right? You can travel back and forth, and nobody can arrest you and detain you, when you go to the Parliament and when you come from the Parliament to your country. Imagine that back then, we were not allowed to enter the Parliament unless we had a QR code. I was the only one during all that period who refused to comply with that order. There were others who, for a while did it, but I was the first and the only one who from the beginning to the end said, I'm not going to comply with it. So every time when I had to enter the Parliament, I had to fight with the security guys. And at the end of the day, because I had all the arguments, the legal arguments, what the treaty says, all that stuff, they could not stop me from entering, but they said we have to write a report and then you will be fined. And I was fined. I received the highest fine.
How much?
About 8,000 or 9,000 euros for not complying with that decision to present a QR code. Well, my argument was the following. On top of the fact that it's violating the treaty and all the European laws that we have, you cannot force me to take a medical product if I don't want to take it. And this is, not only in my opinion, a shift in the relationship between EU institutions and the European people. When this project was envisioned after the Second World War, the whole foundation of the European project was, how do we preserve, on one side, peace through prosperity in Europe, but at the same time, how do we safeguard the fundamental rights of all the individuals? Because it's important for people to understand, especially from Western Hemisphere, that in 1945, 46, 50, 52, 54, these European leaders had the example of USSR on the other side, right? A tyranny, abuses, disregarding basic fundamental rights. So they did not want to kind of copy or mimic that abusing system. They said, well, we want something new that will preserve peace through prosperity, but at the same time safeguard and preserve the basic fundamental rights. So if you read the Treaty of the European Union, especially the preamble, you will see that. The purpose of the European project is to, respect people's rights and national sovereignty and stuff like that. Well, with what Ursula von der Leyen and the previous European Commission did, they changed the dynamic. So the rule was not that your rights are acknowledged and respected and safeguarded, and only in certain instances they could be limited, but they have to be clearly motivated why. They changed the dynamic and the relationship between a citizen and the authorities, where you were kept in houses or you were dismissed of any fundamental rights, and only in certain instances you were allowed to exercise freely your right. Now,
not even exercise it was allowed at some point.
Exactly.
It was crazy. The exercise, it helps with anything to do with diseases.
I know. So for me, who was born and raised in Romania under communism, I was 11 years old when communism collapsed. When you live in a tyrannical system, you can smell tyranny from far away. That's what I did. So I said, I'm going to be opposing this. because it's clearly violating all the EU laws, but most importantly, it's violating the dignity of every human being living in Europe. So if they do that to me, who is a member of the European Parliament and who has certain immunities, because we all have, what do they do to regular people? So I said, I'm going to fight this all the way to the end, which I did. But during that time...
Let's take a step back, because you unfolded a bit the problem. Let's talk a bit. So the issue was that the European Union was violating fundamental rights of the citizens, imposing them to do something that they didn't choose to do.
Yes.
And what else was the main problems of this? That they were forcing them to stay at their houses?
Well, that was at the beginning. So when they passed this digital COVID certificate, they started with from the premise that they are facilitating the freedom of movement. Now, the Treaty of the European Union states that one of the rights that we have as citizens of the European Union, of the countries that are part of the European Union, is freedom of movement. So this is a right. It's not a privilege. So when you say that you need something else, a piece of paper, to facilitate, because here's the key, it's a legal, it's a very fine language, If they claim that you need a piece of paper or a QR code to have your fundamental right facilitated by the government, that means that is not a fundamental right anymore. That means it's a privilege given to you by the government, which can take that privilege away from you. Now that was the problem. That was the main argument that we had against this COVID certificate, that it violated basic fundamental rights. Secondly, or tertiary, I would say.
And also probably on that time, there was probably huge censorship online.
Imagine this.
Mark Zuckerberg came out and said that the Biden administration, I don't know what was happening in Europe, I assume it was similar, was saying to millions of posts online that they were saying that the vaccines have side effects.
Yes.
They were censored. But that's true. The vaccines have side effects. Even if the vaccines are good or well.
No. Look, it's not only vaccines.
They have side effects.
Any medical product. Look, any medical product has a side effect.
So they were censoring this. So you think that it was censored as well in Europe?
Well, not only that. Check this out. Well, if I had a speech in the European Parliament where I presented this, my official speeches were censored online. So you go in the plenary and you exercise your mandate as a member of the European Parliament, and among many things that you can do is to speak, right? You go in the parliament and you have an opinion about something. So you post the speech online, and in a matter of minutes, it's deleted. And then
they deleted your speech?
Yes.
In the European
Not one,
Parliament?
many.
So they deleted your speeches,
but not only my speech.
The European Parliament as an elected official.
As an elected official. Not only that.
What platforms?
Facebook, YouTube. Facebook and YouTube. I was not on Twitter that much back then. My audience was on Facebook. But check this out.
Crazy.
It's crazy.
It gets me upset, actually.
Look. But this is the reason why...
This is the problem without freedom of speech, because they're censoring one side of the story. Anyway,
look,
so we can't get into
Here's the thing. There are two theories, What is the truth? And how do you get to know the truth? Clearly, you have an absolute truth. You get it through revelation. If you're a believer, let's say, in the Bible and all that, right? But we as humans, we know the truth by researching, by checking, and by allowing any criticisms.
Yeah, this is how science works.
Exactly.
Like, I have this data, scrutinize me, maybe
exactly.
You can...
Challenge
and all
it.
the science says this is how it's evolving. So, by default, a science, a studies, has a mistake that will be improved in the future.
Exactly.
So, to not allow this debate to happen, especially online, is it's a problem. That's the big argument
for the sake of the argument, there were many like crazy theories out there. I acknowledge that.
But there always will be.
Look, like
about flat Earth as well, there is crazy theories and all this stuff.
Here's the thing: when let's say you have a regular citizen, okay, saying something absurd online, okay, you might consider that as a false statement or not. But when you have an elected member of the European Parliament saying something, that guy is not nobody. You have behind you, people that are working for you, have European institutions, access to data. The majority of people do not have access to that kind of data. So just to ban or censor opinions that are not in line with the Minister of Truth, that's a problem. So I'll give you an example. In 2021, in the month of June, right, I submitted a request to EMA, which stands for European Medicines Agency, where I asked a certain number of questions about these COVID vaccines. First, when they did the tests on humans, when on animals. What kind of tests if they decoded the DNA sequence?
So this is you as a member of the European Parliament, you have access to ask questions to the Commission. This is what you did, right?
Yeah, this is not to the Commission directly. It's another European entity, EMA, which is the equivalent of FDA in the US. Because they are the one kind of scrutinizing all these authorizations for the vaccines, right? Yeah. Well, I wanted to know when they did the tests on animals, when on humans, if they knew the DNA sequence of the virus. And, when they test these vaccines, they take a group of people, they divide the group in two subgroups and one randomly. One group gets the vaccine, the other one gets the placebo. So after a while, they test them again to see, if they got infected or not. The problem was that because we were in lockdown back then, in the month of April, May, June of 2020, they were running the tests on humans back then. So if you're in the house for 2 months, how are you going to be able to infect yourself with this virus if you don't meet anybody? So when they presented the clinical trials, the clinical studies on humans, they said, well, we tested these vaccines, right? And, people who were vaccinated, they did not get infected. Yes.
Because they were in lockdown.
Because they were in the house for 2 months. So I asked the question, when they were running these tests, were these people purposely exposed to the virus or not?
It's funny.
If
this is true.
Look. So this is my request, right? And I got the answer from Emma. So the question that I had, if they tested this, like when they tested the subjects, if they were purposely exposed to the virus or not, or how exactly they ran the tests, they said the following. And I quote, "The clinical trials were carried out under the usual social restrictive norms applicable in the countries around the world where the clinical trials subjects lived at the time when the trials were being carried out." So if you run the trial in the month of May, April, beginning of June 2020, and everybody was in lockdown, what do you think is going to happen after that trial? Nobody's going to be infected because they were all locked in houses. There's something else very interesting.
It's like a comedy.
It's crazy. So when these companies went to EMA, the European Medicines Agency, and they asked for authorizations to sell their products, they had to present clinical trials on humans, right? No, the clinical trials and trials on animals, right? And I wanted the dates. So you remember at the beginning of our interview, and people might remember, the world found out about the virus, about COVID-19 virus, in December of 2019. In the month of March, April, the European Commission said, well, we gotta help these companies research and develop an mRNA vaccine against this new virus, correct? And we gave them hundreds of millions of euros, right? So when these companies went with their researches and their studies and trials on animals to the European Medicines Agency, EMA, to get authorization, they had to submit all the tests and the dates. You know what? It's interesting. Moderna submitted tests done on animals prior to December 2019. Not only prior. They were done, for example, there are certain tests done in 2017, 2016, 2018.
On what? On
Check it.
COVID-19 vaccine?
Exactly. It's official. I have the documents here.
Okay, continue.
You're
explain.
speechless, huh?
Continue explain.
So, my question was, how is it possible to develop a vaccine and to test a vaccine? They are asking for an authorization in 2021 against a virus that was known to the public in December of 2019, but you ran tests against that virus in 2016.
Maybe they ran similar tests to...
No. But look,
I don't know. I'm just trying...
it's a legit, let's say,
was
premise.
helpful to this...
Look, when you get an authorization, you get an authorization for every specific medical product. You cannot just have an authorization, for a generic product, like in this case. The COVID-19 virus was like SARS-CoV-2 was different than SARS-CoV-1 because that is called SARS-CoV-2, right? Now, nobody could explain. CEO of Moderna was to a hearing at the COVID-19. We had a committee here, a special committee, to find what actually happened. It was not necessarily like an inquiry committee, but more like a fact-finding committee about what happened during the COVID pandemic. And the CEO of Moderna came, and I asked him, how is it possible? And he could not provide a straight answer. Now, you remember what I told you about the definition of a vaccine. Provide you immunity and stopping the spread of the virus. Now, when they impose these medical products onto people, it was obvious that it's not providing immunity because you get infected months after you were vaccinated. Now, the question was, is this stopping the transmission of the virus? Because the reason why the governments ask people and force people to be vaccinated was to stop the transmission of the virus, to save your grandmother, your grandfather, whatever, right? Your aunt. During these hearings at this special committee that we had on COVID, one of my colleagues who's no longer a member of the European Parliament, Rob Ross from Netherlands, he asked the representative of Pfizer, have you tested your product if it's stopping the transmission of the virus? You know what the answer was? No, because we had to move at the speed of science. That's what the person said. So how is this product considered a vaccine anymore? So when all these truths came out, they changed the definition of a vaccine, where they said it's not providing you immunity, but protection. Yeah, this was a shift in the narrative worldwide. In a matter of like 24 hours, the narrative shifted from immunity to protection. How's that possible? Everything was coordinated. So I moved forward.
What time was this?
2021 towards the end. if I remember
the
correctly.
end of the year of so it's after a year of the vaccine.
Yes, because it was obvious that if you get injected
when we had the first vaccines.
December of 2021, I think.
So interesting.
No, December of 2020, something like that. But here's something else. So Ursula von der Leyen, who was back then and still is right now.
So before we go to Ursula von der Leyen in this situation, let me clarify something. So why you didn't answer to my question was, let's say if this test that was used from 2017, 2019, if this test was used to fund for the research of the whole vaccines, isn't it legitimate for them to put them in their research? That
But look, I mean, the problem is this. If the world found out about the virus in December of 2019, they said that it's a new virus, right? The European Union, the same thing happened in the States. These companies, these private companies pretty much, Moderna, Pfizer, they receive public funds to research and develop vaccines against a new virus. How is it possible that Moderna tested its vaccines against COVID-19 since 2016? 3-4 years ago, we found out about the virus. So either the tests were not okay or they had the virus before. There's no other explanation.
So you are saying that this is coordinated from, if let's go with this conspiracy or truth, whatever. Let's go. That they knew that this is the case from 2016, and they were doing tests on COVID-19 vaccines way before. So if this is true, what happened? Like how this everything happened? So you think it was coordinated from China, from all these companies? Like,
well, this is something that has to be investigated. In the European Parliament, because of the left, the Greens, the SD, the EPP, and the Renew groups back then and now, they are doing everything in their power to stop any troll investigation onto this. So we would know the truth.
Because of the pharma lobby or because of what they believe?
Well, it could be the pharma lobby. I'm not saying that it's just the pharma lobby, but it's also the pharma lobby. I mean, imagine during this committee that we had, right? And I was insisting into publishing all these details and researching, and all of my amendments were rejected. So at the end of when they released the report, and all these members of the committee had to disclose with all the special interests that they met with. Who do you think they met with? With Pfizer and Moderna. So it's absurd. Why they are not allowing the truth to come out? So here's something interesting. I told you about these vaccines, right? Medical products. They were purchased based on certain contracts that were signed by Ursula von der Leyen.
Now you are going to the Ursula von der Leyen thing. Wait. So can you tell me a bit more? You have time. Relax.
That's okay.
You are going to attack Ursula von der Leyen. I want you as well. I want to learn. But tell me about the pharma lobby here in the European Union. Because I was talking with Nigel Farage, and he was saying that the lobby of tobacco, the pharma here in the European Union, there is more lobbies than there are actual workers, he said, or something like this. So tell me a bit from your experience. You've been here for 5 years. Like, where do you see the lobbying affecting? Lobbying is like sometimes good because you understand about the company and all this stuff, but to be informed. But you think it's heavily affecting negatively? Like, how do you think about especially the pharma lobby?
Look, I was not lobbied, let's say, by these pharma companies.
Of course, they're not going. They're smart. They're not going to lobby you
because it's they will not risk it. But they lobbied other members, and right now after the Qatargate, any meeting that you have with any of these lobbying groups of people, you have to disclose these meetings. You can go online and check all these members of the European Parliament who they met with, and you will see that many in key positions are meeting with this pharma lobbyists. But I was part of the COVID committee in the previous term, and I saw what happened. I mean, legit questions were not allowed to be even asked. They were not allowed to be answered. The issue of contracts, because, I mean, it's important for people to understand all these quadrillions of, billions of doses of vaccines that were purchased. They were purchased based on certain contracts that were signed by Ursula von der Leyen. Imagine that Ursula von der Leyen exchanged text messages with Albert Bourla, the CEO of Pfizer, text messages, personal messages. So when a journalist from New York Times found out about it and requested the messages, she deleted the messages. But she did something similar when she was the defense minister in the German government. They found out about some backdoor deals that she had, and she deleted, destroyed her phones. I mean, it's a pattern here. When they said that people have to be vaccinated, they claimed, and I quote, "These vaccines are safe and effective." Safe and effective. Safe, in other words, there's no side effect. And effective, it's stopping the transmission of the virus, and then you get immunity and all that. Well, that did not happen. Not only that, but they knew it from the beginning that one dose or one jab is not enough. So when they signed the contracts,
it's not enough for?
It's not enough to stop from being infected, let's say. So when they signed the contracts, they agreed to purchase 10 doses of vaccines per every human being living in the European Union. 10.
The European Commission, agreed to purchase 10 doses
of vaccine.
10 injections.
Exactly.
For every European citizen.
For every European citizen. No, check this out. When I found out about it, because you know how it is, people talk, right? So when I start speaking up about this, I had people from the European Commission, who reached out to me and said, because they were concerned as well. I mean, in my case, as elected member, I could challenge all these decisions, and fight with the guards and fight with the security guys, to enter the parliament. But for our assistants, for APA, and for people working here, they could not do that. We are not the employee of the European Parliament, but our assistants are. So any decision of the Parliament's bureau, for example, it's mandatory for our assistants who are the employees of the Parliament, but we as members, we could challenge that. So that's what I did.
So a lot of people started talking because they were oppressed.
They were oppressed.
In the European Commission, the European Parliament.
Everywhere, because you have to show.
So you got all the information because people started talking.
So I knew where to look for and what to look for. So we pushed for these contracts, right? We said we want to see the contracts. Mainly because there was the waiver of liability clause. So this is what these companies did. On one side, the European Commission in this case, but the similar thing happened in the US. The government came to them and said, look, we want 10 doses of vaccines for every EU citizen. And they said, no problem. You pay us, in certain cases, upfront, but we cannot guarantee that there's no side effects. So we need a waiver of liability. So any person who's injected with this medical product will not go after me in the court to pay them damages.
Really?
Exactly. So
if they're not liable, then
hold on.
we'll have a problem.
Big problem. So in these contracts, these companies received waiver of liabilities. Now the question is, who is liable? It's the government, the state. But the problem is now that the state is forcing you to take a medical product from a company that the state paid for the products, but not the state, people. So now if you have a side effect, you cannot challenge the company, but you have to challenge the government, the state. So it's you, the individual, with limited resources. Do you have millions of euros, dollars to hire expensive attorneys? You don't. So it's you, the individual, versus the government with all the institutions and the power and the money and the unlimited resources. Not only that, but it's you who challenge something, the one that is required to prove your point in court. So if you don't have access to all these details that I just mentioned, if the adverse opinions, let's say, were censored online, you could not even have access to other opinions than that of the government. You had no chance in court. As when I found out about these contracts, I requested these contracts to be published because I wanted to see the content of them. And in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, the European Commission published the contracts in an edited or
the European Commission. These are the contracts again with the companies,
exactly,
and the European Commission,
exactly,
to purchase the vaccines.
Exactly. So this is the contract with Moderna, but with the Pfizer is the same. So check this out. We don't even know the title of this chapter. And here are just some of the pages of that contract.
So they publish it with black stuff. Are they stupid?
Well,
they publish it with black pages.
Check this out. This is transparency, right? What do you think?
What is their answer? Why they did it with these black letters?
Well, this is where your rights are. And nobody knows officially. Unofficially, we know what's in the contracts, but we need to know officially.
Unofficially, what do you mean we know what is the contracts?
Because look, people from the commission, they came with the version of these contracts, unedited. But we cannot use them because they are not public documents. I'm insisting for 4 years now to have these contracts fully disclosed to the public because people need to know what exactly happened to them and with them. So we requested the full version, the publication of full version of this contract. And the commission said, well, we can't. Because when von der Leyen signed these contracts, there's a clause in the contract that the commission cannot publish the contracts unless the company agrees with what needs to be published.
How much power we give to these companies? Like they are the god.
And the devil. Can you imagine that? So, just to understand, the European Commission signs a contract, this contract, right, with these clauses, with a medical company, in this case Moderna. It's the same with Pfizer. So the European Commission signs a contract with Moderna. Moderna says, okay, I'm going to give you hundreds of millions of doses, but you give me a waiver of liability, so I won't be responsible. Okay, I will give you a waiver of liability. The company says, you cannot publish the contract unless we agree with what can be published out of the contract. And the commission says, yes, I'll do it. On the other side, the commission comes to the European Parliament and says, I need you to pass a regulation, the digital COVID certificate, in order to facilitate freedom of movement all across Europe. And the majority of the members comply with that. Now you are a citizen. You cannot go to work. You cannot go to a mall, to a restaurant, even to a hospital, unless you're vaccinated and stuff, right? But at the same time, the government is pushing you to take something. And at the same time, the same government, the European Commission, the European institutions, sometimes even the national governments, are not disclosing everything about these vaccines. Now, why
you are right. If they are doing, they need to be absolute transparency, and they need to show.
But not only that, look, Europe went through, or during the Second World War, the tragedy of the Holocaust. Now, what not many people might know is that in those concentration camps, besides people being killed, the Nazis were doing a lot of medical tests on humans there. That's how many of the medical products were invented. And many discoveries, were achieved, let's say. So after the Second World War and after the Nuremberg trial, they came up with the so-called Nuremberg Code. It was not a binding legislation, let's say, but it was more like a set of principles. And one of those principles stated that a person should not be forced to get a medical product, let's say, unless the decision is based on a free and informed consent. But the Nuremberg Code was not a binding
and informed consent.
There are two conditions, not only free
and informed consent.
In other words, you need to know all these stuff that I showed you here. You need to know these things.
What are the side effects? What is the truth? How they did the testing? Everything. They need to know everything. They need to be informed.
How can you freely exercise your option if you don't know all these things? So it's free and informed consent. So after the Nuremberg Code, in Europe, in the 60s or 70s, if I'm not mistaken, they came up with the Oviedo Convention. So the Council of Europe, which is a different body than the European Union. Council of Europe, it's a larger organization. They came out and they said, look, people were talking, across the globe back then about medical trials and stuff like that. And they said, look, we need to protect the citizens. So they came up with the Oviedo Convention, which clearly states that no person can be forced, to take a medical product, unless that decision is based on a free and informed consent. In the EU, we have the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. One of the most important, one of the first rights guaranteed in the European Union for all the individuals is not to be forced to take a medical product, but that product, or unless that product is taken based on a free and informed consent. So it's not something new, what I'm saying. It's not something new that I'm asking. The only thing that we asked for was that this fundamental right of any EU citizen be respected. And it was not. So now we are in 2025. Just 2 months ago or so, we had the activity report of the Ombudsman for 2024. We just voted for it in the plenary in Strasbourg in December.
I influenced some amendments there. It was in the petitions
committee. Exactly, because it's the petty committee, the one that is kind of supervising what the ombudsman does.
And the ombudsman is basically a third party. It's a different compartment in the European Union. It's trying to hold accountable the institutions in
exactly. So you want to request certain things from the Commission, for example, they are not providing you, then you go to the Ombudsman, right? So it's like it's a public attorney that kind of pleads on your behalf.
Emily O'Reilly.
She was the previous one. She was great. She had the guts to challenge these things. And she is the one who uncovered many of these things that I'm telling you right now. So I table an amendment that the European Commission should publicize the full version of these contracts. You know what happened? The amendment was rejected. So I'm asking this. Why even today, members of this parliament, from the left group, from the Greens, from EPP, from S&D, from Renew, they do not want people to know what's exactly in these contracts. Why? Why? Why are they still hiding these choose from the people.
To be honest, it's not members a lot of the time, it's the parties behind. Because the parties tell them what to vote and they do whatever the party tell them. 95% of their votes, they're just coming. It's not very informed. This is what the party tell them to vote.
That's true.
Most of the times.
Well, even in our group, we have a certain line that but it's a recommended line. Nobody's forcing you to vote one way or another. And at the end of the day, you are elected by the people for the people. But then
they're punishing you in the party if you're not voting.
Well, but look, depends. If you are...
Not in all the parties, but I'm just saying most of the parties. As I understand,
I'm one of the most rebellious MEPs. I don't vote following the party line. I vote following my conscience. Sometimes, members of the parliament from the left, which are like 100 degrees on the other side.
Can we say what you voted yesterday or no?
For what?
Yesterday or no? Cannot say it here.
No, we can.
Okay.
In the committee?
Yeah,
I voted for you.
So I ran as the vice chair of one committee about democracy and shield committee, and he voted for me, and it was in different group, and the line of the group was not to vote for me. So it was very...
But you got 11 votes, more than... I would say you got plenty of votes.
Yeah,
11 votes.
I didn't get elected, but but as an independent something.
It's important. You saw what happened with you over there. This is just a mockery. This is not a democratic process. There you have all these backdoor deals where certain people are talking behind doors with other people, from other groups, and then you have people elected through acclamation and stuff like that.
Yeah. Nobody. I was surprised. Nobody was. I was the only one challenging the vice chair, and the chair was challenged by the Patriots.
Yes.
And they got 8 votes in comparison to. And then
they got 11, so you got more than the Patriots.
That they are the third biggest group in the parliament, which is interesting. And everyone was challenged by acclamation. So nobody was challenged because they knew it's pre-agreement. Nobody has a chance to get elected. So anyways, very interesting. So let's go. I will bring a bit back the conversation to these companies and also Ursula von der Leyen, and back to what you were saying about the Ombudsman, Emily O'Reilly, as well. So you finished, right?
Yeah.
With Emily O'Reilly, she requested the things as well.
Well, she requested, first of all, she ran an investigation and multiple investigations during her previous mandate from 2019 to 2024. Multiple investigation onto the European Commission. And at the end, she concluded on many cases that the Commission did maladministration. Maladministration. Now, which means bad administration, which means resignation, or at least, public shaming. It did not happen. Every time when you say something or you propose something that is challenging Ursula von der Leyen, or let's say that is challenging the establishment, regardless of who that establishment is, you have a very slim chance for that to pass. Otherwise, there's an ad hoc coalition between the left and the so-called center to stop that, to block that.
Okay, so what do you think? So let's talk a bit about these companies. So these companies got ultra rich in the COVID because they got contracts from the company, the commission, they got ultra rich. So they made so much money on this.
Yes, but COVID. Not only that. But imagine this. So they got money from the European Commission to do research and development.
But it's not a problem to make money. But in this way, to make money...
Let me tell you something. I am for free market and stuff. I'm a hardcore conservative guy. But you cannot socialize the risks and capitalize the profits. If you have a private company...
Yes, you cannot just choose 2 companies to give all the
Exactly.
profits.
But not only that, but look, they socialize the risks. They said, well, if you get these vaccines and something happens to you, well, good luck to you. Right?
No, you cannot sue the company.
Exactly. And it's so hard to sue the state.
The government.
Yeah, but
how you can sue the government as an individual.
Exactly. But they make all the profits. Look, if you have a private company, you invent, you do research and development, and you invent a great product. You take the risks. And if that product is so successful on the market that everybody wants, hey, good for you. I'm all in favor of it. I don't want to overtax you and stuff like that. I'm glad that you were successful. But don't ask the government to pass laws to force people to take your product, and if there's a problem with your product, I have to pay for it. Me, the government. Not on my watch. Well, that's what happened. This is the problem right now. Look, they came up with a system of analyzing the excess mortality rate during the pandemic. So they took the previous 5 years, the previous 5 years before the COVID-19. And then they averaged it out, and then they compare month to month after the COVID or during the COVID pandemic. So you know what's the interesting thing? Countries with the highest vaccination rate have and still, or had, and in many instances still have, the highest mortality rate. How is that possible? Romania, for example, which had the lowest vaccination rate, will Bulgaria have the smallest mortality rate compared to Germany and compared to other countries.
Some statistics seems that all this stuff, it was unreasonable that have been made.
So,
but ultimately, so we should, to just look back, okay, we're going to do this during our conclusion, but to jump for, so Ursula von der Leyen, the problem is that you think she was corrupted and got money from all these companies, and that's why she deleted the message? Just what is happening behind this?
You imagine that, assumption? That von der Leyen, for example, gave EU money to certain companies to help these pharmaceutical companies to do whatever they did. And one of the companies that received hundreds of millions of euros was a company where her husband was or had a leading position. That company was in Italy. Too much money involved and too much darkness, I would say. Lack of transparency. When you have lack of transparency, that's a problem. And
so we don't know how they chose them, the companies. We don't know what happened.
So you mentioned that these companies made a lot of money because that's how the contracts were made. So the companies received assurances that the countries will purchase 10 doses of vaccines based on on average. But the pandemic was over and countries did not want to purchase any more vaccines. You know what happened? There's a clause in the contract that states that the countries have to purchase them, regardless if they need them or not, to purchase these doses of vaccines. So you purchase them, you keep them for months. Nobody wants to be vaccinated anymore. Now you got to destroy them. You cannot just throw them away. No. Other money given to these companies to destroy these doses of vaccines. Oh man, this was the biggest scam.
How many? You said billions of
euros. Billions, not millions. Billions. Because
you know numbers or no?
I have the report of the Court of Auditors. I don't remember it from the top of my head, but I remember there was 4.6 billion doses of vaccines and tens of billions of euros paid for everything in total.
Tens of billions of euros paid.
Yes. I can provide you the Court of Auditors report.
Okay, so conclusions.
The conclusion is mainly for people who are watching us to put pressure on their members in the European Parliament to support transparency, to make sure that these contracts...
it's impossible because nobody knows what the members are doing in the European Parliament. When you ask them in their country why you voted and how you are pushing them, they don't know how the system works here in the European Parliament. So it's like, that's why the members come here and nobody's holding them accountable on what they are voting because of the lack of the lack of boringness, the bubble of...
yes, it is a bubble. But it is our job, I would say. It is our job, this is my second term here. You're a newbie.
First days, yeah.
Yeah. But, people like us, have to push for these. And to make these members accountable, the best, the easiest way to do it is to push for more transparency. So the voters from all across EU would know what these people are doing here, because otherwise, God forbid, we will have another pandemic or something like that.
And we're not going to learn from our lessons. If we still vote against the transparency of the vaccines, how do we learn from our lessons?
So what you're doing online, it's very good. It's outstanding. And you're bringing some light in this corner of darkness, I would say.
So just my conclusions, generally, I don't know, maybe you are curious if you agree about the COVID pandemic. So we overreacted. The governments overreacted. We acted very fast and we did a lot of mistakes on the way. Maybe you can say we were afraid and we took a lot of bad decisions.
That is not an excuse.
That is
the problem that I have.
And when you are forcing people to put a vaccine inside their body with these circumstances, it's there's no freedom, basically.
Exactly.
So, and also it was divisive, because the biggest problem that I have with this stuff, it was divisive in communities, in countries. So if you didn't put the vaccine, it was like teams. Oh, you are an anti-vaccine and you are this, and it was divisive. Not only the vaccine was the problem, and the COVID pandemic, all this stuff, but it was divisive to all the member states, between the people that put the vaccine and that were putting pressure to the other people to put the vaccine and all this stuff. So another problem was that. So yeah.
Look, as an elected official, I would say, I often contemplated what would have done if I would have been, let's say, in the executive branch. First and foremost, I would have not pressured people to do it.
Me too.
Look, I understand there's a lot of pressure. We have a pandemic. People are asking you, you gotta act, you gotta do something. Yes, but you have to keep your cool, man. Because if you just allow yourself to be moved in one direction or another, just because someone in the media or some of these NGOs or the pharma lobby says this or that, that's not the way to do it. Now, at the beginning of the pandemic, I don't think anybody knew about the side effects of these medical products. Let's say I give them that benefit of the doubt. But because you don't know the side effects, you don't push them and force people to take them. You could say, look, we tried this, we invest here, we spend money there.
Everything that we do, this is all the data that we do, this is all the science transparency.
I want doctors, all the doctors,
scrutinize
it, and you say what recipe works. Myself, as an elected official, or let's say if I would have been in the executive branch, I don't want to be the one forcing medical products onto people because I'm not a doctor. I don't want to take that responsibility. And there was something else, because when I was so outspoken against the COVID measures, I had someone who came to me and said, well, why are you so against this? And I said, look, it's a matter of conscience, because I don't want to be responsible for, if something happens to anybody. And they said, yeah, but look how many people we save. And I said, let me ask you something.
How many people you killed?
Well, that's why I said the following. Can someone die after getting this COVID vaccine? And the answer was, yeah, but look how many people we save. I said, that was not the question. How many could someone die? Well, but they could die from Advil as well. I agree. But you're not forcing people to take Advil in order to fly, to go from one country to another, or to pass the border, to cross the border. And I restated my question, can someone die? And the person said, well, probabilistically, yes. Well, in that case, I'm against it, because I don't want to play God. It's not my job to play God with people's lives, Russian roulette, And what Europe needs to learn from this is to make sure that if something like this happens again,
we're ready and prepared, and
you're ready and prepared,
lessons.
And you know how to defend your rights and not allow your government to condition your basic fundamental rights, regardless of the risks. Because if you think that you will be safe by giving all of your rights and freedoms away, the government is not going to take care of you.
You have elections coming in Romania.
In Romania,
you are running for a president of Romania.
More than likely, yes.
With your party.
With the Romanian National Conservative Party, yes.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for all these years that you're fighting for this. Very beautiful.
Keep
to
the
see.
fight on.
Thank you guys for watching until the end. We love you.